Oh, hey, how are you? Didn't even see you guys. You guys want to do a video? Informational stuff? Well, come on in then. Well, all right. Now that we've got somewhere comfortable to sit, let's get to work. So, today I want to talk to you guys about getting involved in blacksmithing. We had a class this past weekend where a gentleman was talking about how expensive it would be to get involved, even in the craft in any capacity. And it's not as hard as people think. I think that if you want to start off on a very good note, you could do it for about 500 bucks. If you want to skate by, I think you could do it for around $300. You could maybe get away with 100, but it'd be pretty tight. So the first thing I want to go over for beginner blacksmiths is anvils. There are hundreds of different options of anvils to go from. So the first thing I want to cover is basic anvil anatomy, so we know what we're talking about throughout the video. So there's two main styles that we see commonly in the US, and that is the London pattern or the pig horn. Now, the London pattern, which is pretty much every anvil we have in the shop, minus this one pig horn here, they all have a very similar build in the sense that they all have a face, they have a heel, they have a horn. Often all have a preachel hole and a hardy hole, which is great for different types of tooling. And you have similar things on the pig horn here, but the main difference is that the heel on the back of a London pattern is a more rectangular shape, whereas on the back of a pig horn, it kind of doubles as two horns. So you have a rounded horn here, then a flat tapered heel or a tapered horn. Um, that's the biggest difference between both of them. When it comes to cost and getting involved, everybody wants a cool anvil to start. I don't blame them. When I first started in 2018, it was kind of when Forge and Fire was at its peak, so anvil prices were through the roof. They've gotten a little better since then, a little bit, not a lot. But to get started, a great anvil to start with, in my opinion, is the Pighorn here. So this is sold by, when I bought it, it was Acagio. But now apparently Vivor has the rights to Acagio or something along those lines. And these can be found on Amazon. This is I believe, the 55 pounder. This one, when I bought it, it was $85. Now I believe it's 110 or 120. This is the Vivor London pattern, which is also a 55-pound anvil. That one I paid 110 for on a Black Friday special. I think it runs for around 130 now. So these are brand new cast steel anvils. And I say cast steel because that is important. If you're looking on Amazon, you're going to find things that say cast iron. Cast iron is very soft. It's a decent anvil for hitting wood on or straightening something out, but it's very soft. You're going to ding it with your hammer. Harbor Freight sells I believe, a $60 anvil to start that is cast iron. It's not that great. It's what I started with because I didn't know any better. But I was putting hammer marks in that thing left and right. And as a beginner, you don't really have hammer control. So you're going to have issues like that pop up. Don't get discouraged by it. It's all part of the learning process. But for a brand new anvil, either of these two are a great start. Now, I prefer the Pighorn. They both ring very loud, but I prefer the Pighorn because with the style of smithing that I like to do, I like the wider face. So this has a 4-inch face on it and is only 65 pounds, whereas the 55, sorry, the 55-pound London pattern only has a 3-inch face. I like a wider face for my material, but that's personal preference. If you enjoy the smaller faces, then hey, that's good for you. I enjoy the larger faces. I think that these are great starting out. I would not get cast iron. These are cast steel. So make sure when you're looking on Amazon, you look for cast steel. There's 101 different reviews for both of these anvils because they're a pretty hot topic in the blacksmithing community. If you've watched any anvil review videos, I'm sure you've seen one or the other. I have worked on this style of Pighorn in the 25-pound weight bracket all the way up to the 132-pound weight bracket. Um, the 132 tends to be a little bit softer, but nothing that you're going to notice as a new smith. But if that's out of your price range for 110, $120, rail track anvils, which is what this guy is, are more affordable, like $50, $60 for a piece of rail track. Now, this one was plasma cut down and then sanded over a bunch of times to flatten out the face, and there was a plasma cut hole put in it for the hardy hole. and the horn was sanded over with a flat disc. If you have the time and the desire, you can very easily make an anvil out of a piece of rail track. And that was my second anvil, was a piece of rail track. And it did me very well for the first 2 years that I had it until I upgraded. So rail track is another suitable option to use. A lot of guys use it. The difficulties with rail track is most of the time the top of the track is domed, so you will want to sand it flat or as flat as you can, just so your work comes out a little nicer and doesn't have as many dings in it. That is one of the benefits of a machined flat face, which you really only have on new anvils, and if you're lucky, some of the old ones. Now, for the classes we teach, we do allow the students to use all these anvils if they desire, but we have a 200-pound Haybunden, which is my personal favorite anvil. It's got a 4-inch work face on it. The downside of it is it does have an 1.5-inch hardy hole, which is kind of big for a lot of hardy tools these days. Um, any complaints I have about these real quick before I forget, you will want to dress the edges, which means just take a flat disc and sand down the edges a little bit, because when they are machined, they are extremely sharp, and that can put unnecessary work marks in your steel and also create cold shuts later down the road. So I always just knock the corners off a little bit. Behind me over here, we have an 1893 Fisher anvil. That was my first real legitimate anvil. I think we paid $500 for, or no, we paid $400 for that one. We paid $500 for this Haybunden, but I had to drive 3.5 hours to pick it up, so that part kind of sucked, but it was well worth it. And then this one here was an anvil we got in a trade. We made a knife for somebody, and they traded us for the anvil. That anvil is unmarked, meaning there's no markings to tell us who made it, who the maker was. There is only a 150 that's cast into the side, but it is 150 pounds, which is great. I prefer bigger anvils. Obviously, there's more return. The big thing you will find out with anvils is rebound. It's talked about a lot in blacksmithing videos. Rebound by itself, in the most simple explanation, is the amount of energy that's transferred from the hammer to the workpiece to the anvil and then back into the hammer and up into your arm. So anvils that have good rebound generally have a good hardness, which means you're just working a lot easier at the anvil. Now, cast iron has terrible rebound, so pretty much every time you slug the hammer into your steel, all the energy transfers out and there's nothing coming back, or very minimal coming back into your arm. So as far as anvils go, when you're looking at older anvils, all of these were found on Facebook for the most part. Um, the biggest tip I can give you is to watch the faces of the anvils. So if you have a post, where somebody's selling an anvil, you want to see the face. You want to try and avoid any cracks that are in the face, because you'll have to clean those out. If the cracks are bad enough, the face might shear off more, because a lot of anvils are made all anvils are made 3 ways. So there is either a cast steel base, where from here down is all cast, and then they put a hardened steel plate on top. Or like with the Haybunden here, the bottom is wrought iron forged, and then the top is hardened steel forged, and they weld them together. So this whole top is hardened. Whereas with the Fisher, only this top plate here is hardened. And with these cast steel anvils, it's all hardenable steel, but they only harden the top part. So you want to watch the plate if you're looking at older anvils. You want to figure out how it's made. The maker usually has their specs on how they do it, the process. If not, Google is a great resource for information. You want to make sure that the face is cleanable, workable, that you can sand it down. Every anvil I've gotten, I've had to take a flat disc to and try and flatten it back out. If you have access to a giant mill, go ahead and mill it flat. Go ahead, I won't stop you. I just don't have access to that stuff. So on the account of affordability, these two anvils are the best bang for your buck. But not only do we have a track anvil here, but I have a block of steel. We use this as our striking anvil now, which if you've watched our channel, you've probably seen us use this before. This is just a block of hardened steel that came from our local steel mill. But you can use blocks of steel that you find at a scrap yard or the junkyard, and you'll probably only pay a few cents on the dollar for them. as opposed to a couple dollars a pound, which is kind of how these anvils run. Most anvils I've seen now run for at least $2 or $3 a pound, which isn't unreasonable, but it's not really great for your wallet either. So if you're really budget sensitive, but you really want to get into this, a block of steel from the scrapyard or the junkyard will do you just fine. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are forges. So forges come in all different shapes and sizes. Now we have a 2-burner forge that should really be a 3-burner, and a single burner forge. Now both of ours we have made. We have made them in house. We bought the KO wool, put it inside, cut the holes, hinges, all that stuff, welded everything together. It ended up costing us right around $100 to do it. But if you look on Amazon, Amazon now sells forges for around $80. They have 2 burners that you can find for around 120, 3 burners that are a little bit more expensive. But the forge in and of itself, you can buy relatively easily, and it is assembly required. But all the reviews I've seen about the ones that they buy on Amazon work really well. I just don't have a need for them because I have 2 that I've built, so I never bought them. But you can get into it with a forge from Amazon for around $80 up until $200 or $300. So it's really how much you want to buy and how much you want to invest. So right away, if we buy a brand new anvil for $120 and we buy a brand new forge for $80, we're only at $200 and we have the most important pieces to blacksmith. Now, with forges, you can also make a coal forge. You can dig a hole in the ground, feed it with a hair dryer. There's a bunch of different ways to make a coal forge. So a gas forge isn't a necessity. I prefer them because they keep an even heat throughout the material. The downside is that it often heats up the majority of your material and not an isolated spot. So that part kind of stinks. But you can obviously make a coal forge if that's what you're into. There's easy ways to do that. We have a video on the channel of how we build a coal forge. That had a lot of fabrication to it, but the bare bones would stop at just having the brake drum that we have with a pipe bolted fast and then an air channel going into it. If you're curious about that, the video's on our channel. Please feel free to watch it and check it out. But with forges, you need some way to keep your metal hot. For us, you're not a blacksmith. You're just a fabricator. And I'm not dissing you if you are. I'm just saying that's what makes us different. We are a blacksmith because we actually forge and hammer and shape metal using heat and a hammer, sometimes pliers and stuff like that. The next important thing you will need is tongs. Now, the tongs that I have in my shop, I have made 80% of them. I've watched videos on YouTube on how to make them. There's videos about how to make them from one piece of steel so you don't need tongs to make tongs, which is really nice, especially when you're starting out on a very low budget. So you can buy a piece of steel at the hardware store for around $15, make it yourself with your forge and your anvil and your hammer. You will know that in a woodworking shop, the most common phrase is you can never have enough clamps. In a blacksmith shop, you can never have enough tongs. You want to have the right tongs for the job. There is nothing that beats a pair of good fitting tongs on your workpiece, especially when you're trying to do intricate stuff, especially in knife making. Trust me, I found out the hard way. I started using vice grips, I started using pliers, and the end result was me dropping a lot of metal. So getting yourself a good pair of tongs is essential, whether you make them or buy them. Amazon does sell some starter packs. I purchased one of their DIY packs. It's not super easy, um, but it is doable. The next thing you'll need past tongs is hammers. Now, in our shop, the hammers that we use are Harbor Freight hammers. We bought sledgehammers from Harbor Freight, and we cut the handle off, and we reforged the shape of the hammer. Most of them are a low carbon steel when you buy them from Harbor Freight, so you can easily reharden them if you just water quench them and then temper them appropriately. But with blacksmithing, it's not just a sledgehammer, okay, which is what you're going to buy from the factory, from the store. A sledgehammer by itself will not do you any good. You can learn to use it, you can work with it, but it's not the most beneficial for the craft. So we're looking at $200 for the forge and the anvil, depending on what size you buy. And then you're looking at around $30 to $40 for the bar stock and the square stock to make your tongs. So right now we're around $250. Your hammers from Harbor Freight, most of them are either $8.99 or $12.99. So just starting with one of those hammers, you're only at what, 250, 260, somewhere around there. I'm not good at math. If you watched my Forge and Fire episode, you would know I'm not good at math. if you're going to buy a Harbor Freight hammer or you're going to buy a hardware store hammer, I would suggest that you dress the face. And when I say that, I don't mean put a pretty t-shirt or a pretty dress on it. You want for a normal blacksmith rounding hammer, you want a round side and a flat side. And the flat side is still a little round. It's not completely flat. But when you buy a hardware store hammer, if you look at the face of the hammer, you'll see very crisp grind lines around the face. It's usually a circle, and there's a slight chamfer around it. You want to take your flap disc and kind of round those off, because if you don't, those are going to end up in your workpiece. So you have your hammers, you have your tongs, you have your anvil, you have your forge. That's the majority of what you need to get started. The next thing you'll need is a grinder of some sort. Now, if you want to use a grinder, one of the grinders you can use is an angle grinder. It's relatively cheap. You can find a cheap one at Walmart for 20 bucks with a flap disc and a cutoff wheel. You want the cutoff wheel to cut off material and the flap disc to clean everything up. If you want to be more bougie than that, you can go to Harbor Freight again and get the 1x30, which is what I started off in my knife making career. I had a 1x30 and I used it for 2 years to make knives. They are slow, but they will get the job done. The best thing you can do is get a good belt for it. Now, moving up from there, and what takes our price range up to about $500, is if you buy a 2x42 sander. 2x42s have way more power than a 1x30, but you can produce pretty clean, not green, you can produce clean grind lines with a 2x42. I know other knife makers around me that use 2x42s. I've used a 2x42, and I've had pretty decent success with it. But most of them are around $200 price point. So you add that to your anvil, your forge, your hammers, your tongs, you're looking at around $500 for a good setup. Because when you start doing this, if you want to have the most optimal things, you got to invest a little more. But on the low end of the price range, if you made a coal forge, you're looking at maybe 50 bucks. You get a piece of scrap steel, again, maybe 50 bucks. So you're at 100. And then you buy an angle grinder, so you're at 120. And then you take your Harbor Freight hammer for 8 bucks, 128. And you buy a pair of tongs offline, or you make a pair of tongs, and you're looking at around $200. So you can get in for around $200. If you want to have a great base to start off of, I would recommend the $500 budget. And you can buy these things over time. I have 2x72s in the shop. I am not a rich man. I do not make a ton of money off of doing this. I just do it because I love it and it feels good for me. It's a therapy for me. It's a stress reliever for me. So you can make a 2x72. I have a video on the channel of how we made a 2x72 for less than $400. Now, if you try and buy a 2x72, which is the main grinder you see a lot of knife makers using, most of them cost around $1,000. I know that Vevor put one out for around $800, but it's not even a 2x72. I think it's a 2x92. It's bigger, but there are workarounds. So if you want to see a way to make a 2x72, please check out the channel. We have a video for that. But that's pretty much everything you need to get started as far as materials go in blacksmithing. But I promise that if this is something you're interested in and you try it out, you will see how awesome it is. The biggest thing we see in every class, people come in and their favorite part is just forming the metal under their hand. Sometimes you don't make a good thing. And when I started out, I made a ton of turds. Not in the bathroom, I meant. I got the forge. I made a lot of messes, a lot of mistakes. I learned things the hard way because my only teacher was YouTube. I had nobody else in my life to ask for advice, so I learned the hard way. But I appreciate the craft far more now. And I make good things now, not because I'm just naturally gifted, but because I put the time in. And if it's something you're passionate about, this is a skill that can carry you places in life. I mean, there are always a demand for handmade things. And if the world ever goes to poop, hey, you're the post-apocalyptic buddy, because you can make nails, you can make knives, you can make farming tools, all that stuff. Blacksmithing is an awesome thing to do, whether it's a hobby or a profession. But it all starts somewhere. And I'm hoping this video helps you out when you want to get started and all the information you might need throughout the process. If you have questions or if you feel I missed something, please drop a comment below. I'd love to answer you back. We do our best to answer every single comment that we have. So all that being said, please like, comment, and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time when we do an awesome build. We don't know what we're going to do yet, but we're going to do something cool. Part of me says we're thinking about making a shield. Who knows? We'll see. You got to tune in to find out. God bless everybody and have a good night.